Hey folks, this is Alan from AMA Boston. I'm here to introduce another episode of Talking Marketing. This month, I had the pleasure of speaking to Julia Becker Collins from Vision Advertising about what we need to look for in our job searches, the key to 100% employee retention, and so much more juicy, educational, insightful stuff. Without hyping it up too much, this is probably my favorite episode that we've produced in quite a while, and that's mainly due to Julia's wonderful energy, again, those incredible insights, and just like the overall really fun vibe of the conversation that we got to have. And if you like what you're about to hear and you or your company would like to sponsor a future podcast episode, you can reach out to our sponsorship team. They can be found by emailing sponsorship@amaboston.org. We have a number of different plans, and you can sponsor an episode, get your name, your company's name out there. And of course, if you want to begin your own job search to find a company that values you the way Vision Advertising, for example, values their employees, we have a marketing job board over at amaboston.org that updates pretty regularly. And I'd also like to thank everyone at the AMA Boston team just for making my first year here really special. I know I came to Talking Marketing as the podcast was on a brief hiatus, and it was really challenging at first to get back into the groove of what we wanted to do with the show. But I just wanted to give special thanks to a couple people. So special thanks to Brian, John, Emily, Bob, Chris, Peter, and Lydia for enabling me to get the podcast back off the ground, with many more names that I'm almost certainly forgetting. And if you're watching the video version over on our YouTube channel, which I encourage you to do, you'll notice that I actually gave Julia the spotlight on our Zoom call, which means that it's literally just her face for the episode. I wasn't able to go back and retroactively fix that, but you can't see my face on the episode, which is fine with me. You know, she's the center, she's the star of this one. So just be aware that she wasn't talking to an invisible being, and I didn't even have my camera off. It's just that I clicked the wrong buttons. So that's my bad. We actually even had a new volunteer sit in on this episode as well. And if you choose to volunteer with AMA Boston, and particularly on the content team, which I'm VP of, then I always offer people the opportunity to sit into an episode, see how the soup is made, so to speak, and just, you know, even if you just want to listen to the episode before it comes out, you can be on the Zoom call with me. We can make that work. But yeah, I think we've really made some awesome content this year, and I think we're going to make even better stuff in 2023. But that's enough setup. I'm now going to turn it over to my conversation with Julia Becker Collins. Hello and welcome to Talking Marketing, an AMA Boston podcast where we chat with marketing professionals across various industries, and we aim to inspire, empower, and educate new young marketers to be their best selves. I'm Alan Ibrahim, your host and VP of Content for AMA Boston, and today I'm very excited to welcome our guest, Julia Becker Collins. Julia has been the COO of Vision Advertising since January of 2019, and she co-founded the Metro West Women's Network in 2016. Welcome to the show, Julia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, same. This interview has been sort of, to give a little bit behind the scenes, has been cooking for a long time, and has changed hands a while, but we're finally making it happen, and I'm so excited for our conversation today.
As am I.
So let's start with your sort of history with Vision Advertising and what brought you there in your career path, if you want to share that for the folks.
Sure. I have been with Vision Advertising for 6 years. I came on board as Vice President of Marketing and Operations initially, with a clear trajectory to take over as Chief Operating Officer and really take over leadership of the company. Our CEO and founder, Laura, was getting ready to step away from the company and really needed to work on other projects, as I think most people would need to do after many, many, many years of running the company. Our company has actually been around for 23 years, and she founded it in her dorm room of Becker College. Total coincidence on my last name, by the way.
I was going to ask, yeah. Amazing.
I know, funny coincidence. And so I came on board 6 years ago, and I believe it's 4 years ago that I became COO. January, it'll be 4 years. Um, and really, my role, just like the quick version of it now, is that I run the whole company. So it's that I have the operating staff is all reporting to me. Um, the day-to-day operations are my responsibility in terms of, the buck stops with me. I work with our lawyer, I work with our accountant and our CPA. I deal with behind the scenes work with strategy for the company, projections, plans for next 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, et cetera. Big changes for the company, but also small details like our new communications manager needs to be trained on how we do A, B, and C. How can I make sure that she's getting the proper support, even if it's not through me? In many small companies, somebody on staff is HR, and that's me. So I am consistently making sure that I'm up to date on all of the laws and regulations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and federal laws and regulations, which have definitely been changing in the past few years.
No doubt.
And yes, notifying the staff, making sure we're staying in compliance, et cetera. But then also doing all of the recruitment of staff, dealing with any human resource issues, making sure that staff is happy and retained, or dealing with any problems we might have. And when I was brought on board 6 years ago, the staff did report to me, and Laura stayed on board to help train me up, which was great. It was a very clear path with great leadership to the next position with great training. Prior to joining Vision Advertising, I was with another agency. I was the only woman in senior leadership. Yep. If you've ever seen the show Mad Men, it very much felt like that.
You were a Peggy of sorts.
Sort of. Yeah. It was like full glass conference room, drinking the brown liquor at the end of the day. Which, listen, I enjoy the brown liquor, but maybe not in the middle of the office.
No, probably
Um,
not.
yeah, it was a really great experience because it helped me see the other side of what's happening in marketing, understanding what's happening, in other agencies. So that was very interesting. And then prior to that, I actually spent 10 years working in downtown Boston, doing marketing and fundraising and event planning for nonprofits of all sizes. So very, very large nonprofits down to teeny tiny nonprofits where the operating budget was $300,000 a year, up to nonprofits that had millions and millions and millions of dollars in endowments.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the whole spectrum. I have built branding and marketing programs from the ground up. I have switched funding for nonprofits from one income source to another. I've created training programs for staff to help them understand how to make sure we're staying on brand in what we talk about and in all of our communication when they are not marketing people.
Right.
How do you sell things in marketing? How do you make sure that we're fundraising correctly? And one of the reasons I'm doing well with sales now, because that's another portion of my job, is because it's incredibly similar to fundraising. Because with fundraising, you're really selling a feeling, and in marketing, you're selling air. So,
Well said. I never really thought about it like that.
yep.
It's come up a lot in these podcasts, like the difference between sales and marketing, but I haven't thought about sales and fundraising specifically and how important both of
Very
those are to the
similar.
business. Yeah.
Well, and especially if your marketing is a service, not a product,
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar because you're not selling something they can hold and touch and taste and walk away with.
Mm-hmm.
It's You need to sell something really ethereal. So you have to really work with the person on your relationship and understand what they need out of it. What problem are you solving for them? It's
Right.
very relational. It's very consultative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing as fundraising. What problem are you solving for them? Do they need more money towards their tax deduction? Do they need more money to make them feel better about their lives? Do they need to donate more money to a nonprofit that they really like? Like you have to like get into the psychology of the person you're talking
It's interesting. Yeah, right. And you mentioned earlier like the smooth career path you were able to have within Vision. I think that's something a lot of people want because, starting out, you don't always know what your forward momentum is going to look like. So, is there something about the way that Vision did it that you feel like more companies could learn from, like in terms of getting people moving them forward and upward?
to. Well, part of it is that Vision's a small company, so that's
Yeah, of
helpful.
course.
We're agile and able to move, bend, weave in ways that large companies just aren't able to do. But I happen to prefer small companies
Right.
because we can do that. You get positives and negatives with big and small companies. But a lot of the things we do really well, both with how we recruit now and how I was recruited, is we're very transparent. We're
Right.
saying really clearly, this is what you're walking into. I was told very clearly what I was walking into. It wasn't sugar coated for me. It was, here is the mess. Here are the problems.
Right.
Seriously, because you're
Yeah.
going into a leadership position. It's not going to be, gumdrops and roses and butterflies. There's going to be problems, especially if there was problems with the previous people in those positions. Um, what am I going to try to solve? Who is going to support me through that? How much support am I going to have, and how long will I have that support? And at what point am I no longer going to have training wheels?
Hmm.
Like what it was really transparent, the recruitment process when I was brought on board. Um, and then the first 2 years when I was with the company, the conversations between myself and the CEO were very transparent. I would say, we have all of these things I'm trying to solve, and she would be right next to me trying to solve it. We would be in step. She would, you know, be there winning with me and be there struggling with me, and to
Right.
have a partnership of trying to, turn the ship in that way and get things to a better place. And that's not to say we were in a bad place, but just to like change things within a well-established company. She
Of course.
wasn't against change, which is a really big deal. And so thinking about what other companies could be doing better, to create a better transition for people in their careers, it's, the transparency of what you're
Hmm.
walking into, having the self-awareness of knowing what the problems or the great things are,
Hmm.
um, knowing how much support that person's going to get, and really standing behind that and being clear about that support. If you're not able to provide a lot of support, say that. That's okay. Don't
Right.
lie to the person. Um, Making sure there's buy-in from the staff. I was interviewed thoroughly by the staff. I spent a
Yeah.
whole day being interviewed by the staff, and I would not have been hired unless the staff signed off on me. And I still do that with my staff. So if I bring on a new staff person, my whole staff has to interview them, because we are a small company and culture is incredibly important to us. So I want my staff to be bought into the new people I hire. So, when you get your staff or just the team or whoever is going to be affected by that new hire or that change and who's leading a team, when you get them bought into it, the hard work becomes less hard.
Right. Because you're being interviewed, it's almost like you're interviewing for the team, not just like for by the hiring manager or by the CEO, for example. It's like you are becoming an applicant of an entire group, which
Correct.
I think, yeah, it's not as common as we would like you would think, because a lot of times, at least in my experience, it's like, oh, you interview, the hiring person handles you, and then they throw you at the team and they say they seem good. I don't know, like that can be
Right.
cause a lot of
Right. And the
tension.
you and maybe that person has never even interacted with the group,
Yeah,
and they don't
exactly.
understand the politics in the group or the dynamic of the group, or, especially
The
if you're
culture.
leading the group, what specific needs does that group have?
Hmm.
Like personality wise, non monetary benefit wise, like how do they need to be motivated? Are you even able to motivate them in that way? And then I think another part of it, to speak to your earlier question about how did I have such a smooth transition, in
Hmm.
the upward trajectory,
Hmm.
is, I really had to prove that I could successfully lead every day. I made very hard decisions every single day, and I
Yeah.
stood behind them, and I said, and I still do this, and I said, I run this company or I led that team. And so if there's a problem, it's on me. You don't
Right.
hide from your responsibility.
Embrace them. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And so, that all covers the stuff with Vision. And I'm curious then, like bringing you there, what do you feel? Because, my basic question is, when you were in college or even before college, did you think that you would be going from VP of Ops to COO of an
No,
advertising agency?
no, no, no.
I figured.
I've never even had formal marketing training.
There you go.
No, my bachelor degree is in women's studies with an art history minor. I always remind people that if I had studied marketing in college, it wouldn't even be applicable because there was no social media when I was in college.
Whoa.
I know I
Yeah.
don't look as old as I am, and there was no Facebook. There's no
Right.
nothing. MySpace. So, like, it wouldn't, what would they have taught me? Like, to, hand draw something or about like buying space in a magazine that was printed, how would that support me now?
Right.
So, really, a lot of the things I learned, I knew I would be in leadership because that's my personality.
Yeah.
If you like personality tests, we always joke around about it. I like Enneagram tests. I'm an Enneagram 8, which is very much like a leadership style.
Sure.
Um, I've always been in leadership. So, like, even in college, when I was in groups, I would either start the group or I would lead the group. I had 3 jobs my last year of college. I led 2 groups, and I had a full class load. I just like have
Wow.
always been that person,
Yeah.
to just make it work and just figure out how it had to be done. Um, so leadership has never scared me. I've actually been in leadership since my first job outside of college.
Mhm.
Um, that that's never scared me, but I never thought that marketing would be where it took me. I
Mhm.
thought I was going to be a lawyer. I was
No kidding.
pre-law. Yeah, I was pre-law in college, and I went to law school 2 years after college, and then I discovered that was not for me.
Mm-mm.
So I then left law school, which I think is a good point to make to people listening, because you can make decisions and then decide that those decisions are not right for you. And then you can pivot and weave, and you don't have to feel bad about that decision. You can just be like, oh, I tried it. And I guess that wasn't right for me. This company, this job, this school, this whatever. It's okay. It's a learning experience. I don't regret going to law school. I learned a ton. And I learned about
Exactly.
myself.
Yeah, it's come up a lot in episodes where people say, maybe like in our interview recently with Vladimir, he talked about how like a marketing education is becoming less valuable in certain fields because, like you're saying, you can learn all of those skills elsewhere and just in the field.
Mhm.
But also, everybody comes here from a different perspective. I myself got to digital marketing from dentistry, so like
Right.
it just happens weirdly.
Right.
Sometimes you wake up one day and you say, not this anymore. Nope, let's try something
Right.
else.
And marketing, you could come to marketing from like the artist perspective. You
Yeah.
could, like, that's where Katrina on my team came from. She has like a really great formal art background. She has a
Mhm.
graphic design background, a photography background. And
Wow.
she's a really great eye for the aesthetics of things, which I do not have. She's incredible. But you can also come to it like I did in terms of problem solving. I think
Right.
about marketing in terms of what problem can I solve for you? You said you needed, Facebook posts. Well, why do you need Facebook posts? You're trying to solve a problem. You just might not realize you're trying to solve a problem. So let me help you solve that problem. So
Right.
I think strategically. And that's really all marketing is to me. It's how am I helping you solve a problem within your budgets and your resources?
Really well said. Yeah. And related to that, about your leadership style, something that you're known online and through your interviews for is this philosophy called servant leadership,
Mhm.
which is an interesting term. I'm wondering if you could speak a bit for folks as to what that is and also like how you implement it at Vision.
Sure. So I think I initially heard the term servant leadership from Adam Grant, who's a really well known organizational psychologist. He has his own podcast, he's written a number of books.
Hmm.
Um, he talks a lot about servant leadership. And the idea with servant leadership is that I don't, you don't work for me, I work for you. So
I
it's
see.
literally like taking the words as what they mean at face value. So, yes, I have hired you to work for me, but at the end of the day, I work for you, because the best leaders are the ones that make sure that you, as the person who works for me, have everything they need to be successful. Right. Like before we started recording, I made the joke about like I hire people that are smarter than me, which is true. I really do
Right.
hire people that are smarter than me. And I think you should, in general, hire people that are smarter than you.
Yeah.
Because why do you want to be the smartest person in the room? that's boring and
Yeah.
also ineffective and inefficient. Servant leadership is the idea that you pay yourself last, that you make sure everybody else has what they need before you get what you need. And that's not being a martyr, that's making sure that your job as a leader is done first. And then everything else you need to do gets done. So I end and start every day that I work as saying, "Hi, I'm online. How can I support you? What do you guys need today?" I don't sign off at the end of the day until I've checked in with my team. "Hi, I'm going to leave. I have a doctor's appointment, or I'm signing off at the end of the day. Does anybody need anything else from me today?"
Right.
And they know, my staff knows that they can speak up. They do. Or they can tell me to go home
Get
and,
out of
and
here.
please leave. And they have learned. And that's the nice thing, is that once you have built the trust with your team and they understand that you will show up for them
Right.
always, and you will challenge them to be the best versions of themselves. You're not going to save them, but you
No.
will help them. Once you have shown that to them and you have built that trust, they will give it back to you, and
Yeah.
that they will support you. And it creates a much better environment. When I interview people for vision advertising and they ask me about the culture of vision advertising, I really struggle to explain to them, because there's no drama, there's no politics, there's no talking behind people's backs. We all
Right.
genuinely like each other.
Hmm.
And if they didn't work for me, I'd probably be friends with half my staff. But I also want to be clear about the power dynamics.
Right.
So these are people that are good people that just need support, because everybody is good at something and everybody struggles with something. And
Yeah.
it's your job as the leader to step in and say, "How can I support you today? What can
Hmm.
I do to make sure that you meet your goals?" And that's my job. And
Right.
that's what servant leadership is, at like a very like base level.
Of course. Yeah, and I wonder too, like for companies that attempt something like that, they see the leadership and they understand, oh, I need to acknowledge the power dynamic, but instead of supporting, it's like, oh, I do the hard parts, or I am the bad guy, as is a term
Right.
I've often heard in leadership. But like that doesn't always work, because it makes you the opposition, the antagonist, and like that acknowledges the capital difference, the big D difference, but it also, you're not supporting, you're just taking on blame or making yourself a sort of martyr for your company, which doesn't work as
Right.
well.
Right. And that doesn't, nobody's happy in that situation. Right. Like, on my most stressed out, most difficult days where I work a 16-hour day and I'm losing my mind, and my husband looks at me and he's like, "You can't even see straight anymore. You need to close your laptop." I still love my staff the most. And that's not me blowing smoke. That's me saying they work harder than me and they will always work harder than me. And they
Hmm.
are amazing.
Right.
And they would say the same about me, I would think. That's how you build this cycle of, "I will show up for you if you show up for me." I'm not here to be anybody's mommy or daddy. I'm not here to criticize you when you make a mistake. I'm here to give you constructive criticism so that you can be a better, professional, and you can grow and we can help problem solve together. I'm not here to save you. And I am definitely here to tell you when you did a big win. Like, I am here to celebrate all
Right.
day. That that's your job. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate it, and I also think sometimes people run away from the emotions of it.
Yeah. And then that comes too with a sort of like, I don't want to necessarily dive in too deep into this, but a like gendered feeling about leadership, right? This feeling of like, I'm the big man boss and I have to take it seriously. I mean, you guys can have fun, but I have to be the serious one. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like that anymore. The marketing is pivoting
Correct,
away from that.
correct. I also think there's a lot of leaders struggle with being direct but not
Yeah.
being mean.
Right.
So you have to, and part of that is
Very
you need,
different.
right, they're very different. And part of this is setting the correct culture. And part of this is also making sure you're setting expectations. We
Hmm.
set expectations from when we start interviewing, the first phone call. This is what I expect. Here's what I need. Da 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 da. How do you respond to criticism? How do you receive feedback? How do you best communicate? Da 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 da. When people ask
Hmm.
me about the culture, we talk about transparency and honesty and communication. We talk about a culture of adulting,
Right.
all the whole, for us, it's really the whole package of how I've built the way that I run the company.
Yeah.
And that means that there is no micromanagement. That means that everybody feels empowered to solve their own problems. That also means they know they have the support they need.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to talk about regarding that style of management is like, the pandemic. And while a lot of podcasts and companies aren't talking so much about it in this way anymore, I still think it's worth bringing up that Vision had a sort of culture that, to my understanding, made the pivot to remote work really smooth. And I'm wondering if you could speak to sort of how that happened, and if, like, again, companies can take some advice from how you guys handled it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about that. I think part of it is that, so prior to the pandemic, we did actually have one person that was remote. So I
Okay, of
definitely think that that helps. So I don't want to, I'll pat myself on the back, but I also want to be transparent.
course.
Um, um, we we really try to set ourselves up for success in a lot of ways. Um, it's New England. There's snowstorms here. We thought we'd have to work from home occasionally, so we had been kind of prepping that for a long time. Obviously, nobody really knew that we were going to be remote for as long as we
Long
were.
term. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But because we were prepared for like 3 days of snow, we had transitioned 5 years prior to all laptops, no desktops. We had
Huh.
transitioned to no separate monitors. We had transitioned to everybody takes their laptop home at night.
Hmm.
So, like that responsibility. We had transitioned to a virtual server, not a hard server. We
Right.
had transitioned to the ability to pack up the entire office and put it in my trunk.
Right.
So like really just we just changed things a lot. And also because I had somebody on the West Coast already, he and I had worked for a number of years. He's worked for me for 6 years.
Hmm.
He and I had worked really hard at making sure that we maintained that culture of he was connected to the team, even though the whole team was in person here and he was on the West Coast. We worked really hard at being like, okay, we're going to over explain things in our chat. We're going to
Right.
make sure we consistently talk in the group
Hmm.
chat so that he feels connected. So we were already doing all of that. And then when we switched to, just at the drop of a hat to now everybody's remote, well, you already all had your laptops at home. Nobody had to
Right.
go get anything. Our server is already available. We don't have to worry about power outages. I know how to connect to everybody because we've already done that. Everything was kind of seamless in that way. Obviously, we had to make some changes, but we had a lot of systems already set up because I tend to be a worst case scenario person,
Yeah.
so I want to think about things in advance. Um, so there's especially if you're in leadership, you need to have a get hit by the bus plan,
Yeah.
and so I always want to figure that out. So a lot of that came from that. It's also just trying to be preventative, like what do you need? What do you need and what don't you need? Like we don't
Hmm.
need desktops, we need laptops.
Right.
Do you really need that giant desk? No, you don't. So trying to figure all of that out, but also, trying to maintain the culture when you're all virtual is really hard. But I'm sure some people aren't going to enjoy this, but we're mandatory camera on for all
Hmm.
meetings. And I know people don't like that. People at my company like it, but I've had conversations with my husband who works for a very large company and
Yeah.
nobody has their camera on in those meetings. And I was like, well, how do you know anybody? How do you know what
Exactly.
anybody looks like or their mannerisms or what they really think about something? He's like, well, I don't know. It's not my meeting. So I was like, okay, well, everyone is camera on.
Yeah.
So in every meeting, all interns, all everybody, it can look like the Brady Bunch on my screen, but
Well, it's challenging, right? Because if someone says like it's not my meeting, then it's like, well, what makes it your meeting other than you literally run? Like, I understand he means like you running it, but when we don't have our cameras on and when we don't engage like that, then why is anybody doing anything? You
right,
start to like
right,
detach from your work.
correct. And we don't, unless it's like a huge meeting with another client, there's really like 30 people on the call. We really don't
Yeah.
mute ourselves. We just jump in the conversation. We try to really recreate what it would be like to be together, right?
Right.
So it's not
Exactly.
mute, unmute, mute, unmute.
Video
We
on,
just
video
jump
off.
in,
Yeah.
right? No, we just have conversations. And at the beginning of every all hands, we have like a designated 20 minutes or so. It's not like scheduled, but really we spend the first 20 minutes or so just socializing. How
Yeah.
are you? How was your Thanksgiving? Everybody wants to know what they bought. What did you buy on Black
Black Friday.
Friday?
Sure.
Right. How was one of the women on my team has a little kid. How was Halloween? She's sharing photos.
Hmm.
Somebody just got a cat. We want to see photos of the cat.
Of course.
It's just like all that kind of stuff. And then there's usually a transition into like just talking about stuff going on with the company. So it's like
Hmm.
it's like being in the same room as much as you can be. And we have kept that the whole time.
Right.
So people know what to expect. And my staff now, nobody has ever, except for me, has ever met my staff that lives on the West Coast in person, but they
Wow.
all feel like they know him really, really
Right.
well.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah,
I wonder then though, because that's super useful, especially for, like you said, smaller companies where like that kind of open communication and free time works super well. But for these like bigger agencies that are very time sensitive and very stressed about deadlines, it's like uh it just isn't tenable.
right.
And so I wonder sort of on like to zoom out a little bit to take the 10,000-foot view. How do you see this remote work trend changing advertising, especially now that, at least in the US, most restrictions are kind of lifted? So some people are going back. My work in particular is trying to push us to a 3 days a week, but not enforcing it in any way, like 3 days in office, not enforcing it. But I myself especially feel a lack of culture because none of us talk to each other or see each other. So I'm wondering how
Right.
all of that is changing things.
It's interesting. So this past year, I hired 4 people. So we're
Hmm.
going through a period of growth.
Hmm.
And it was a very interesting period of hiring people, very different than in the past. And one of the biggest things I heard from people, because I'll always ask people, like, what's it like for you looking for a job right now? Because I can tell you what it's like for me trying to hire right now, but I want to know what it's like for you. Like, what do you
Yeah.
experience? What's it like? And one of the things I hear from people, or did hear from people when I was hiring, is, you know, a lot of the big companies want people in office. Like,
Right.
we are going back into office and this is a hard line, or we expect to all be back in office by mid 2023.
Hmm.
And they're paying more money, but the non monetary benefits are like back to 2019. Not great. 2 weeks vacation.
Hmm.
You need to wear a suit. It's like forgetting that we all wore sweatpants for the past 3 years. It's
Totally.
sort of like they're trying to go like in Back to the Future, like go backwards.
Right.
Which, if you're hiring somebody in a younger generation, and I don't mean 22, I mean like under 30,
Yeah.
that is not going to fly. So those people, and I have had lots of conversations. All of those people who would once go work for a larger company are now looking at smaller companies
Right.
because they are looking for the non-monetary benefits. Like, they will take a significant pay cut to have the flexibility, to have the remote work,
Right.
to have the adulting, to
Hmm.
have more vacation time. And when large companies are complaining about, well, we can't fill these positions, I just sit there and go, well, have you looked at what you're offering? Because what you're offering isn't aligned with the current culture of what people are looking for. It's like
Hmm.
a square peg round hole situation of who's applying and what they're offering.
Right.
So it's, I definitely see a lot of that. The conversations I have, we have some outgoing interns right now, and they're all applying for jobs, and that's what they're seeing. They're like, yeah, I can make $80,000 fresh out of college, but I have to be in the office, which is an hour away, and I have to wear a suit every day. So there
On
goes,
time, in and out, dressed
right,
well. Yeah,
there goes 20K of that 80K
exactly.
from commuting, gas, buying a new wardrobe,
Hmm. Hmm.
insurance, blah, blah,
Food.
blah. Right. So why would I do that? Especially after they've spent a semester with me,
Right.
where I'm like, are you wearing sweatpants? Because we're all wearing sweatpants
Yeah.
right now. So I definitely see that. Um, I know I have friends that are my age in all different kinds of industries, whether it's marketing, advertising, or other professional services industries, where when their companies are like, well, we want you all back in the office, they
Hmm.
start looking for a new job. It's
Yeah.
just people don't people if you like the remote work you do. I will say, to speak to your point about the culture, it is easier to keep up a culture at a smaller company.
Of course. Of course.
or if a team does a really good job at keeping up great
Yeah.
culture. So
Right.
there is a way to do it. It's just hard.
Of course, and that's the challenge. That's in someone in your position, for example, that is the challenge. Because like myself, I work for the government, and so I don't know the bigger picture people that I work for at all, and I never will. But I
Right.
do know the 30 people that I talk to every week, and that's my team. I just consider that the scope of my worldview, so to speak, at work.
Right.
And also, I'm included in that group of people who you said declined better pay for better benefits. Like I have a remote job because I declined something that paid more that was in person 5 days a week, which didn't make sense. Um,
Right.
and so that's especially regarding hiring for people and people who want to join a new agency. Envision actually had from my research, a very high, if not 100% retention rate during the pandemic. So we've talked about like what brings people to a company like that, but what is the secret to keeping people around?
uh, it's well, trying to figure out what people are motivated by is always an important part of retention as a
Hmm.
leader. Having really transparent conversations with people from the beginning so that they can feel comfortable saying to you, hey, I'm starting to look for something else.
Hmm.
And I have worked at companies where they have said to me, come and talk to me if you're starting to look for something else, because I'd rather just have that conversation with you. But it was
Yeah.
very evident that that was not a like open door policy. That wasn't a like, I'm here for you to support you. That was a, you know, I'm not really here to support you.
Hmm.
And I just want to know if you're leaving.
Right.
I want to know, like, if somebody's looking, let me help you find something else. If you're not happy here, I want you to be happy somewhere else, or let me create a new job for you. Like, tell me that you love working here, but you don't love your role. That's
Right.
something I'm totally open to, always. And I have
Of
done that
course.
with people. Right. I've had people that work for me and they've been like, I love working here. I love working for you. I am losing my mind in this job. And I'll be like,
Hmm.
then let's change your job.
Let's fix that.
It's a right, we're a small company. We can move things around. So there's some of that. It's goes back to the servant leadership part that we talked about earlier. During the height of the quarantine, when all kinds of businesses were shutting down and shuttering, and furloughing and laying people off. We didn't do any of that. We didn't furlough. We didn't lay anybody off.
Right.
I actually took a significant pay cut to make sure that my staff wouldn't have to get furloughed. My
Right.
entire staff stayed at 100% pay through the entire pandemic, but I did not,
Right.
um, so that there would be no problems
Hmm.
with their payroll. And then once we kind of hit equilibrium, we were back to normal.
Right.
But that's the other part of what I said earlier. You pay yourself last, and that's in all capacities. It's my job to make sure that their payroll goes through, not to pay myself first.
Of
That's not my
course.
job as a leader, and I think that's often lost. And
Yeah.
I was transparent with them about it, and I didn't say it to them to be a martyr. I said it to them to know that I wasn't kidding about
Right.
showing up, and that really helped with loyalty for them to understand that I took a pay cut for a long time.
Show that you
So
mean it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
And I think also just like to flip that, what do you think like candidates, young people maybe looking for a new job in marketing, that want to work at some place like Vision, what should they be looking for? Because a lot of them want to feel valued, want to feel like their work has impact. Is there like flags, green or red, that you think people should be looking for in jobs that maybe trend towards a good being treated well at your employer?
yeah, so I just hired somebody a couple months ago who went through this process where she was really looking for a culture rather than
Hmm.
a specific kind of job. She was looking for something in marketing, but she was kind of like, I don't care where it is in the corporate, hierarchy. I could
Right.
be bottom, it could be top, it could be whatever, but I'm looking for a really good company. Um, and she had never worked at a remote company before, and so I had to have a long conversation with her about that. But she really researched the companies.
Yeah.
Like, she wanted to not only see what we had out on LinkedIn, she looked at our Instagram. She
Mm.
then pulled up people's personal Instagram profiles. Then she pulled up people's personal LinkedIn profiles. Like, is it just the company being like, we're so amazing? Or is it that the people that work there are actually happy? Um,
Right.
do you have any common connections with the people that work there or on the team that you'd be on? Can you reach out to those people, or can you ask for an introduction and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this position that I'm interested in? You know, do you feel comfortable having that conversation with me? That's what she did. She reached out to somebody on my team and was like, hey, I'm interested. Can we talk about this? Which is a really smart move. Um, and then also seeing, what has the company publicly said about their culture?
Right.
Because the company can say, like, we're interested in switching to a 4-day work week, and it's, about to be 2023. Congratulations on catching up.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I don't mean to be like snarky, but like,
The
we
rest of the
have
world's
had
been there.
right, like, we have had unlimited PTO for 6 years.
Hmm. Right.
So
It's
thank
not
you for
new.
catching up with us. But like, it's just like, what are and I think the other thing with like somebody really just starting out and looking for things
Hmm.
is like, what is important to you? Not what's important to me, not what's important to my staff. What's important
Right.
to you? Is it vacation time? Is it a flexible work schedule? Like, what's your one non-negotiable?
Hmm.
And whatever that is, you have to like stick to it. Is it how much you're
Yeah.
making? Is it, your schedule? Is it like, what is it? And
Your
then like
benefits.
start there. Yeah.
And to kind of go back to you for a sec, when we talk about like work that is impactful, work that is meaningful, and you do a lot, and you have been doing a lot. I'm wondering then, what is it about your work, and what's something that you find in your work day to day that is the most impactful?
Yeah, I find a lot that's really impactful and
Yeah.
meaningful. From what I said earlier about how I can help empower people in their careers, I find that incredibly impactful and meaningful when I have people that work for me that had never been in marketing before. I think everybody on my staff they've never been in marketing before.
No kidding.
Um, yeah, no,
Wow.
and kind of notorious for hiring people that don't have a marketing. No, I have one person on my staff that was previously in
That is,
marketing.
okay.
So, yeah, I'm very much about hiring people that like are doing career changes or don't have bachelor degrees or kind of all of those things. Um, Seeing people grow in their careers and find their footing and find their voice is one of the joys of my life. I have somebody on my staff who like was terrified of public speaking and now does large public speaking events. Um, to
Wow.
have people like come into their own and like have really like grabbed the mentorship I give them with both hands is
Hmm.
like the happiest thing for me.
Of course.
Um, for clients that were previously like burned by another agency and come to us, which is, very sad. And I really never want that to happen. And they come
Yeah.
on board with us and they're just like, oh my God, this is so much better. We are making so much money. I can hire more people. They are, their small business is thriving, their large
Hmm.
business is thriving. It affects them, it affects their families, it affects the people who work for them and their families. It's just like a large cycle. That's great. They're happy. We have this one client who's pretty large. Um, they had never done marketing for this one, department, one vertical in their portfolio, and they
Yeah.
hired us a number of years ago to start doing marketing. And it has just grown exponentially ever since we took it over. And they're just like, it is so amazing to see, what's happened with that side of the business.
Right.
And we just never were prepared for that. And it's a family owned company. So it's
Hmm.
like the impact of that has is so fantastic. So it's really rewarding, I have to say.
I love to hear it. Not enough companies are like centering that part of it really well. Um,
Yeah.
and to that point, I think something else that Vision has been centering really well is diversity and equity, and inclusion, of course, the classic DEI. So Vision's a woman-run company, and that means that you're already thinking about a diversity and equality and all of that. I'm curious then what you feel are the big priorities for uplifting different identities, especially in a white, cisgendered, hetero, male-dominated field like advertising. Like, what are the big
Yeah.
priorities to make diversity work?
Yeah. I mean, I really, as the leader of the company, I really put it on my own shoulders to make sure that we are trying to recruit and hire as diverse as possible in kind of every vertical that diversity hits,
Yeah.
whether it's disability or race or gender or sexual identity or all the different areas at trying to actively recruit in those ways. How can
Yeah.
we be actively recruiting, and what can we be doing to remove barriers to entry? A really good example of that is a number of years ago, we removed the requirement to have any kind of higher education for any of our applicants for any job. We do not require an associate's degree. We do not require a bachelor's degree for any job at our company whatsoever,
Hmm.
which is incredibly unusual at any professional services company, but especially in marketing and
Right.
advertising. Um, and I have a bachelor's and a master's degree. And so I don't believe that what worked for me works for somebody else.
Right. Of
Um,
course.
Most marketing and advertising companies require you have a bachelor's degree in marketing. I don't
Hmm.
have a bachelor's degree in marketing, and I run a marketing agency. So based on that, I wouldn't even be qualified to to apply for a low level job.
Right.
This shows that it doesn't work.
Right.
So that's one barrier to entry that we have removed. We've also tried to recruit in a variety of ways, not just on LinkedIn, trying to do outreach, trying to make sure we're interviewing, whether it's in a blind way or in interviewing in a wide swath of candidates, having people referred over to us, etc. Also trying to make sure that we're interacting with clients that are from a very
Different
diverse
places.
population. Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Marketing, when it's coming from this very, monolithic place, that means that what they are producing is monolithic. So it's not
Right.
just that the agency is monolithic, the voice they are giving to another company is monolithic. And that's a giant problem. And so we are very proud to be 100% women owned and run, and we are certified by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as such.
Hmm.
Um, I have two men on staff, so we really want to have as much diversity as possible, both in who we work with and who we hire.
Right. It's not just internal, it's external as well. You're working with clients that
Exactly.
are broad backgrounds.
Exactly. And who we talk to, who we network with, what events we go to, it's really kind of all of those things.
Hmm.
I worked for a company once that would only hire people that went to private colleges. Like,
Weird. Bizarre.
talk
And
about
again,
the
like you said,
opposite.
it's
It's
flattening
the
the type of work.
opposite.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It can really, especially in marketing and advertising, can flatten the type of work that you produce, like you're saying. Like you're all, if we all speak in one voice, then we can only be heard in one voice. That kind of thing.
Right. And you're stifling creativity at that point.
Big
You
time.
bring so much more to the table when you have a diverse panel of interests and perspectives. Just by,
Yeah.
like, here's an example, like, just by hiring a younger group of people, I'm getting more information than I would have by not hiring a younger group of people.
Hmm.
By hiring somebody that's Gen Z, I'm learning things about emojis I wouldn't have learned. I didn't know that the crying, laughing emoji was bad. I just learned it. But
And
also
it's
it's understanding your limitations, right? Like, I'm white and cisgendered, and so I understand that I need to also work with a DEI professional
of
on certain
course.
things. So it's understanding your own limitations.
Right. And being humble and being open-minded about
Mhm.
all of that. Yeah. If I have to hear from another marketing professional who at some point asks their team, should we be on TikTok? It's like, guys, you should know what this is already. You shouldn't even be like asking about this. Like it's growing exponentially faster than you can keep up with.
Right. And
Um,
it's also like, are you even asking the right question? Should you be
yeah,
on TikTok? I don't know. Who are you trying to reach?
exactly. Yeah, we had a guest a few months ago who talked about that exact idea. Like you can be on every social media platform. You
Mhm.
actually have the time to do that, but is it worth it or is it could be
Right.
actively harmful? The example she gave was like the CIA shouldn't be on TikTok. They have no
Right.
reason to be there. It's not helpful to their brand or whatever. It's actually bad for them to be there. So like,
Right. And then on the other side of it is TSA is amazing on Instagram. It's
yeah,
my favorite account ever. And it makes an agency that everyone hates so much more relatable.
exactly. You can use the tools to work with you, not against you.
Exactly.
That brings me to some fun questions. Now that we've talked a lot about
Right.
marketing and hiring, we can get a little bit lighter from here. You talked about LinkedIn, and a classic question I always love to ask my guests is, what's something about you, Julia, that people might not be able to guess from your LinkedIn profile?
I tend to be pretty much an open book, but if they were kind of like generally perusing my LinkedIn profile, they might not know that I'm an ultra runner. And I
Ooh.
also do CrossFit. So we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. An
Uh-huh.
ultra marathon is anything that's longer than a marathon. So a marathon is 26.2 miles. Technically, an ultra marathon is 26.3 miles.
Right.
My preferred distance is a 50K or a 55K, so 32 to 35 miles. It's trail running.
I see.
I am next year doing my 10th ultra marathon.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
This is just related to that. I'm so curious now that I like in my little bit of experience, I'm noticing a decent amount of marketers and advertisers are like runners. Is there a connection that I'm missing? Or are we all
I
just like in the same social groups?
or we all enjoy suffering.
I think I didn't want to say it, but everyone who runs regularly at some point accepts that this is gonna hurt me actively and I'm gonna keep doing it.
Well, so for me, one of the things I think about, so I've been ultra running since 2019, beginning of
Okay.
2019, so not that long. I was
Okay.
doing competitive obstacle racing before that, that kind of thing. And I got
Uh-huh.
really into ultra running. Um, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2020, and and I have a number of health conditions in addition to that. I'm pretty open about all of it. But one of the things for me about ultra running is it's like the suffering that I choose.
I
So
see.
there's a lot of things you can't have any agency over in life, and especially when you run a company and you have health conditions. But with ultra running and long distance running in general, it's the suffering you get to choose.
I never thought about it like that. That's really beautiful. Well, because yeah, there's so much in life that we can't control, whether it's our health or our ability or our role in the society that you just can't choose when the good and bad happens. But at least with running or ultra
Exactly.
running,
Yeah,
it's like when I put this
exactly.
away, I get to feel good, and when I do it, I'm just gonna feel bad.
Right, but it's also like predictable. It's like you
Yeah,
know what the suffering is going to be like. You know it's coming. You know you'll come out the other side, especially if you've done it before. Like
yeah.
I know the one I just signed up for next year. I've run that race before. I have a sense of it. I know it will hurt, but I know it will be amazing.
Here comes the heel pain. Here comes the the gasping for
Hip,
air.
the hip pain
The
is
hip.
like,
Yeah, that's the brutal one.
yeah.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful point there.
Thanks.
Um, this is a question too, like, are you hopeful about the future of marketing and advertising? Because you're very optimistic, you're very positive when we're smiling and joking here. Um, are we going in a good direction, you think?
Do I get to make a Twitter joke?
I've been holding back. I have like a list of Twitter jokes I've been trying not to make, so you can make the first one. Go ahead.
Well, putting Twitter on the back burner, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. 100%. We were
um,
talking earlier, by the way, yeah, about like companies like going backwards and the whole Twitter thing about like everyone needs to be hardcore. I want you in the office. It's like, what are you doing? What year is
right,
this?
right. Um, yeah, putting that aside, yeah. I mean, I actually like where a lot of the platforms are going. I love the new energy that the younger generation is kind of putting into everything. I like, people that have grown up with social media and with kind of like the technology in their face. They've like taken it and put it into a whole new way. It's really
Mhm.
amazing. I love all of that. I love the energy that it produces and the organic place it goes to, and the really fun things that come out of that. Um, just like the jokes we make about ourselves.
Right.
That like I don't have TikTok. I watch TikToks on Instagram like an adult two
Like an
weeks
adult.
after I'm out. Right.
Yes.
I like that we can make fun of ourselves. Like that is awesome. And then there's Twitter over.
Ugh. It's really just, do you think what's the platform? No one knows the real answer to this, but what's the next one? If Twitter someday spontaneously combusts, are we going to Hive? Are we going to Mastodon or
I know. I was listening to an NPR piece where they were talking about all of that, except the problem with Mastodon and Hive is that they don't have the infrastructure built to
correct?
handle the influx of people or the security to deal with everything from people all over the planet. Because
Yeah.
the thing with Twitter that is so helpful is people use it to organize
Right.
and to come together around issues and problems and information, and it just
Yeah.
can handle that at a scale that nobody else can handle, and it's built for just an information population system.
Hmm.
Whereas even like any of the other big ones are not built for just information population.
Right.
So that's the problem with what's happening with Twitter, is that there's nothing there to back it up, and it will cause a lot of problems if it goes down.
Right. It carved its own niche so deep that there's nothing else that can fill it anymore in that
Correct.
specific way. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
My last question, pretty simple one, but hopefully maybe inspiring to some new people. Just what's a piece of advice that you might give to new advertising or marketing students that want to become a successful COO someday?
The piece of advice I would give them is the piece of advice I give to all students that are starting out in their careers, no matter what they're looking to do. And it's the advice I was given when I was in my last year of college. And it's some of the most helpful advice I was ever given, is apply for everything. There's this idea that you should only apply for things where you meet all of the qualifications,
Right.
or they say they want 3 years of this and 5 years of that, or you need to have a bachelor's degree in marketing, or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
None of that is true. Apply for everything. There is nothing for you to lose by applying. You should, pitch yourself in the cover letter. You should explain why you are a valued person and you could make your experience work, even if you're fresh out of college and you had a college job. But there is nothing that bad that happens. One of the things you can say to yourself, and this is often what has helped me when I was trying to grow my career, is, what's the worst that happens? They just don't call you. There's nothing bad that happens.
Right.
Like, there's just you go through 3 interviews and you don't get the job. Okay, well, now you're better at interviews. Okay, moving on. We psych ourselves out of things because you don't meet one of the qualifications. As somebody that builds those job descriptions, I am here to tell you, half the time I hire people that don't meet any of those qualifications.
Yeah. You have to put something there. It's not always like, it's not firm as people think it is.
It's more, if you're looking for a company to work for that is like where I work and what I run and the teams that I run, I care more about the person and less about your experience. I care about if you understand problem solving, and do you understand details versus big picture? Do you understand what's an emergency and not an emergency? Do you understand how to communicate clearly with people? I can't teach you all of that, but I can definitely teach you how to do Instagram. Right. So I can't teach you problem solving. You either get that or you don't.
Yeah. That's from your life. That's not from being at a job or whatever.
Correct. Do you understand when to elevate something to the next level? Do you understand, I'm not going to teach you how to be a good writer. I'm not going to teach you grammar. Like, if you know all of that, apply. Like, it's more about the person and specific skills, not do you know how to use Canva? I can teach you that.
Learn in 5 minutes. It's meant to be easy to learn. That's the point.
Seriously. And I think, like, I'm a good example, like, because I don't have formal marketing training.
Yeah.
So you can figure it out.
Just apply.
Exactly.
It's actually funny how much I'm seeing similarities between like that advice and like advice people give me like on dating apps. It's like, just like swipe, just say yes to everyone, chat with everyone. I don't care if you don't like them. Maybe you'll find something. And it's all about getting to the interview or getting to the first date. It's like weirdly similar.
I mean, we create these false barriers for ourselves, right? Like, you don't want to go to an event because you're going to go by yourself. You don't want to go to this networking event because what if nobody talks to you? You don't want to go to this gala because you're not going to know anybody there. And that it's like, well, okay, so just walk yourself through it. Do a logic game of what's the worst that's going to happen.
At least you went, you'd say you went.
Exactly. And it's, one of the questions you asked me earlier is, this, how I got to where I am now. I became a COO of a company long before I was 40 years old. How did I do that? I did that through just like relentless marketing of myself and networking of myself. I went to every networking event. I went to everything I could think of. I went to galas. I went to fundraisers. I, created a great profile for myself on LinkedIn. I, broadened my network. I went to, different kinds of workshops and webinars, and, I just marketed and
build yourself. Yeah.
Right. Just got there on my own. And that's not to say other people didn't help me. That's just to say, like, I just kept pushing. I didn't wait for somebody to come be like, here is your offer.
Right. Silver platter with a job on it.
Right.
Wonderful advice, Julia. And
thanks.
I think that brings me to the end of the episode. Is there anything that you would like to plug for folks, Vision Advertising or otherwise?
Yeah, so you can definitely find us on all of the different social media platforms. We are on Instagram, and that's definitely where you can find more about our culture and our fun things. That is Vision Advertising Rocks, because we do. We are on Facebook and we are on LinkedIn. We have paused our Twitter.
Smart.
um,
Thinking ahead.
our website is vision-advertising.com, and on that website and also on any of our social media pages, you can learn more about the free marketing webinars that we offer, both on Facebook Live and in conjunction with the Center for Women in Enterprise, completely free.
Wow.
Yep.
Fantastic. For us here at AMA Boston, I'll have a plug zone at the end that was pre-recorded where I tell people about where they can check out our job board and our website. But amaboston.org is the home for all of that. And once again, Julia Becker Collins, everyone, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Marketing today. It was a really great chat.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in 2 months, folks, for the next episode. So if you're on YouTube, by the way, give that video a like, subscribe to our channel. We're going to try and get more podcasts on here. And otherwise, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Talking Marketing and you want to hear more of our conversations with marketing professionals, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major podcast platform of choice. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube as AMA Boston. And most importantly, if you'd like to support the work we do here, please consider becoming an AMA Boston member by heading over to amaboston.org/become-a-member. AMABoston.org is also the #1 place to find all of our work, including the AMA Boston blog, events calendar, job board, and a whole suite of ways to volunteer with our team. We get to keep doing this thanks to the support of listeners like you. Thank you.